Welcome to today's episode of Invest in Rome. I'm your host, Dear Nell. Today's guest is Keeley Hubbard, capital raising expert, coach, visionary, and managing partner behind Texas Legacy Vines, a 1,000-acre vineyard operation in the $20 billion Texas wine industry. In this episode, we'll explore Keeley's journey into vineyard investments. We'll dive into the details of capital raising and discuss the art of not being salesy, but instead having authentic conversations in your business. Let's dive in. As a managing partner of Texas Legacy Vines, can you give us a little background about yourself? How you got into vineyard investments? How does one get into vineyard investments?
Yeah, I know. It's kind of a strange path. Most people don't realize that Texas has such a big wine industry. So I think if you had asked me even 5 years ago if I would be doing vineyard investing, I'd probably say, what? That's crazy. It sounds like fun. It wasn't on my radar originally. So I'm a serial sales gal. I've been I was in corporate, managed large sales teams, VP of sales for quite some time, left to start my own thing. I think like a lot of people do, just wanted to build their own empire instead of somebody else's. And I've been raising private capital for almost 10 years. And so got into commercial real estate once the financial markets just weren't giving the returns that investors were looking for. We knew we had to pivot. So we got into commercial real estate, met a lot of amazing people, partners, been teaching capital raising for quite some time too. But in the commercial real estate space, we were doing a podcast. When I say we, it was my dad and I, who's my business partner. So grateful to be able to do business and life with him. And I think we were on Whitney Sewell's podcast, and he asked us, what do you do in your free time? And my dad mentioned, he's like, well, I've got a family ranch and he loves land. And he's like, what do you do on the ranch? He's like, well, I've got cattle and all the tax write-offs. And my dad was looking at putting a vineyard on the family ranch just because they're aesthetically beautiful. So he just casually mentioned that. And this guy called me, his name's Mason. And he was like, hey, I know you don't know me, but I got to talk to your dad. I was like, okay, sure. Here's his number. I'll get my dad some random guy's phone number. And I was like, hey, dad, I just gave some guy named Mason your number. Anyways, Mason and his family, the Moreland family, have been running vineyards in Texas for many, many years. They basically took the way California farms vineyards. They brought that technology to Texas because Texas is about 20 years behind California. And he knew my dad's business background and experience and mine, with investors and raising capital. And so he was like, we're looking for partners. We want to expand. And so we did underwriting for about 18 months before we launched the first vineyard syndication. And, that was close to 5 years ago now. And here we are. So it's my family and the Moreland family. And we love it. We love land. We love Texas. We're like those obnoxious Texans that love the state. And they're beautiful. I mean, I feel like there's something spiritual about a vineyard too. So it's a very rewarding project.
Well, I have two questions from that. How's working with your dad? And I live in California, so, everyone knows Napa, everyone knows Sonoma and, the Central Coast. So my question off of that is, what makes Texas vineyards so unique compared to, like, say, California wineries and stuff?
I'll start with your first question about working with my dad. It's not our first rodeo. So we've been in business together before. So we've done this before back in 2010. And I just feel like it's super rewarding. A lot of people think like, oh man, you're working with family. That can be really hard. But we have such a great relationship that we've over the years learned to let each other lean into each other's strengths. Like my dad loves underwriting. He loves putting projects together. He loves managing them, capital management, all the things. And he's not really a big fan of like the whole people side of the business. He likes people, generally speaking, but he'd rather just not deal with anybody. So I handle all that. I talk to investors and, raise the money for it and the marketing and all that fun stuff. So I think we just really balance each other out. I wouldn't be in vineyards if I didn't have my dad because I'm not an underwriting girl. I don't enjoy it. I could learn it. It's not my strength. I'm a people person. I'm not a spreadsheets girl. I think that we've found ways to leverage each other's strengths, even our communication styles, which I think is so important, and learn how to speak each other's language. He's that analytical type and I hate details. So I know that if I'm going to bring something to him or have a question, I need to be very specific and give patience and give him more details of what I would probably want if I was looking for an answer myself. So, we've done this for a while now, and I think we just get better and better over time. But it's, the greatest blessing in my life is to work with my dad. And I truly am grateful for it. It's been very rewarding.
Oh, I
And then
love
your other
that.
question,
I just have
I
dreams of
know
like,
it's
one day when my daughter's 4, my son's 8, and one day I just have dreams of like we're older and they join the family business and we all work together.
I love that. So your other question was about what makes Texas different than California. So we're a huge wine industry here, and people don't know that because 90 to 95% of our wine is consumed in state. Like it's bought by Texans and it's drank by Texans. So you're not going to see a Texas wine in a California liquor store or a wine store. And we're massive. So we're a $20 billion industry. We're the fifth largest wine grape growing state in the United States, but we don't ship our wine outside of state primarily because we don't have enough grapes here. So we have massive wine demand, and currently we're producing about 50% of what the state actually needs to support the demand for all of the wine drinkers here in Texas, which is why we got into it. There's this window of opportunity to fill that supply gap. Farmers can't keep up with the demand. They're old school. They've done things the same way for a very long time. A big vineyard in Texas is probably 40 to 60 acres. Our operations are close to 300 acres for each vineyard block. So, and we use big machines. Most Texas farmers are using, hand labor. So they've got 30, 40 people out in the vineyard. We can run a few hundred acres with 3 people and machines. So we're just doing things a little bit differently compared to other Texas farmers. And we're not competing with them. We're just trying to keep up with the wine demand. The other thing too is you can't plant a vineyard and have fruit next year. I mean, it's it's a long-term thing. So to, stand a vineyard up and get it to full harvest takes about 4 to 5 years. That demand keeps growing and our supply gap keeps widening, which is why we got into this. But our climate is very similar to Central California. So like the Paso Robles area, not Napa. You're never going to get a Chardonnay out of Texas. You're never going to get a Pinot Noir. Like it's too hot here. But our climate is very similar to that Central California kind of
Mhm.
valley, very hot days, cooler nights, very dry, no humidity. And so we can grow some really good reds. And we also have some really good whites that come out of Texas as well.
I'll have to try that. I honestly
Yes.
can't say I've tried a lot of Texas wines. I guess I'll have to
Most
come
people
visit you
haven't.
in Texas.
Yes, it's not even on their radar, but there's some really good winemakers here.
I wanted to go back to talking about the investing part. When investors think of investing in other commercial properties, like say rentals and apartments and things like that, at a very high level, it's like, oh, this is the rent, this is the expenses, and then they you can from there kind of gauge it's a good investment or not. But when you're looking at a vineyard and investing in vineyard, like how do you know it's a good deal? Like how would someone know what to look for?
There's a few things. So, and a few things based on what our investors are looking at. You want to make sure that you're going into a market where you're not competing with a bunch of other fruit that's already being sold. So, the whole reason we got into it is because of that supply gap. It was a great opportunity to come in and keep, Texas fruit, making Texas wine versus wineries trying to buy out a state to fill the gap. So there's got to be demand for it. I think the second thing that's really important is your operational team. So I've gotten contacted by quite a few people that are like, hey, this resort is selling a resort plus a vineyard in the East Coast. Can you look at it and tell me what you think? I'm like, I don't know, because we know Texas operations. And I would never get into vineyards unless we had a team that understands the science of growing grapes. This is not plant seeds and then you have a harvest. There is a lot of science that goes into it. Active vineyard management from a scientific perspective, and all the way down to like the nitty gritty details of, in a 300-acre vineyard, these 40 acres of this wine grape need different watering, say volume, compared to this 60 acres over here because of the soil that it's in and the minerals that are in the soil of that part of the vineyard. Like there's a lot of details that go into it. So I wouldn't get into it unless you had a team that's done it before. So the Moreland family's been doing this for close to 9 years. And then we brought in a guy named Craig Tevis, who used to run 6,000 acres for Treasury, which is the biggest winery in the world. And he ran that 6,000 acres in California, wanted to move to Texas. So now he's our director of vineyard operations. We've got a good operations team. And then the other thing is like crop insurance, right? I mean, this is farming. You could have a year where we project 17% return and we come in at 14. And then the next year we come in at 19. And the next year we come in at 16. Like you're going to have some fluctuations. But what really protects capital is crop insurance. And you've got to have an operation that's big enough that can afford crop insurance. So if something were to happen, like a weather event that totally devastated the crop that year, and it would have to be a massive storm to sit on top of 300 acres, like a hailstorm, and just knock all the fruit off of our vines, we'll be paying $600,000 to $800,000 a year in crop insurance premiums to make sure that if that were to happen, insurance company cuts us a check and we still make distributions to investors for harvest that year. So I don't know if I would get into a farming project without crop insurance because of the unknowns of weather, but those are some key things that I would look for.
Where are you located at? Where's your vineyard located at? Is it like,
It's in Northwest Texas. So if you've ever heard of Lubbock, Texas, or like Texas Tech University,
yes, uh-huh.
yeah, they're like 45 minutes south of Lubbock.
I know somebody who lives there was telling me like in Lubbock they had the other week some crazy hurricane force winds.
I still have some of the dust here in Dallas that blew in. Like our skies were totally brown one day from all the dust coming in from West Texas from the windstorm.
Wow.
But yeah, the weather can be a little crazy out there, but nothing that farmers haven't navigated for many decades. It's just the norm.
Beyond vineyards, you are known for your expertise in raising capital. You said over a decade of sales, but you're emphasizing not being salesy, right?
Yes. Not being the person everybody can't stand. People hate salespeople.
What are some of the, I guess, common pitfalls you see when people are trying to raise capital? Why do old school sales tactics, why do they not work? So basically, traditional sales are exactly why people can't stand salespeople, right? So
Yeah.
how do you build that trust with investors, with potential investors, without all the sales?
I've been in sales now for close to 19 years, and I started raising capital about 10 years ago. And even having been in sales for that long, I built my career doing the opposite of what the typical salesperson does because I can't stand that stuff. And it never felt authentic to me, and it made me feel cheesy. And so even before I started raising capital, I was selling high ticket financial education. People are writing checks for $15,000 to $75,000 to learn how to actively trade the financial markets, how to manage their money. And I knew that like, okay, this is high ticket. They need like the Rolls Royce experience. I don't want to come across like a used car lot. And so from then I started making things feel more exclusive and made some decisions on my own that it had to be the right fit. Like what I had wasn't the perfect fit for everybody, but especially in raising money. So drawing investors to you and finding the right investors means that you've got to be selective because they're being selective too on the operators they want to work with and the investments they want in. But we need to be selective on our end as well to make sure that it's a good cultural fit. And I think that language really resonates with investors that I'm not here to pitch you on vineyards. It may not be the right fit. It depends on what you're looking for. And I promise you that I'll be transparent about that and let you know that if I don't think it's the right fit, as long as you can promise me that if you hate this thing and you don't want to be a part of it, that you don't feel bad telling me that. Because I promise you won't hurt my feelings. And I think that like very disarming type of conversation really helps investors take their walls down so we can have a productive conversation about what's not working, actually figure out, should we talk further? Should we do business together in the future? It's the opposite approach of what typical salespeople are doing is the big one. And I think a lot of people that get into capital raising are terrified of it because they think they have to come across like the traditional salesperson and do all the, gross techniques and pushy and manipulative and all those sales tactics. They don't want to come across like that. Then they fall into the trap of thinking that they can automate everything and turn it into an automated capital raising machine, which doesn't exist. I've been doing this for long enough, the organic old school way to tell you that, the emails support the process. The marketing is pretty. It supports the process. It doesn't raise the money. Conversations are what raises the capital. So my approach has always been very kind of one-on-one, not commercialized with investors. They've got my cell phone. We talk frequently. And that's the approach I've always preferred. And it's worked, for me and for many of my clients for many years.
I completely agree. I feel like there's so many courses or masterminds out there where they talk about systems and setting up drip campaigns. That's great. But in the end, when you're talking to someone who is very sophisticated and very smart and successful, they need a personal touch, right? They need a little more than that, right? For sure.
Marketers love our industry because marketers can sell our ego. Our ego wants the shortcut. And that's what marketers do. They sell us the shortcut on you just need all these drip campaigns and automations, and people spend all this money and they build it and then it's crickets. Yeah. So there's no escaping like learning real sales skills. It's a life skill in my opinion. And if you can learn sales skills, like authentic ones where you what you're doing is you're not selling to them. Like I'm not doing sales to somebody. I'm doing it for them. I'm really serving. Like you can learn that skill set. You'll never be without income. You'll never be without a job. You'll have unlimited opportunities. Like there's so much that you can accomplish in life from learning really good communication skills.
Do you have a tip for someone, say a networking tip? Like you just meet somebody and you have 5 minutes with them and you know that they would be a good investor.
People make the mistake at networking events thinking that you got to like pitch your whole business and your company and your deal. And really the goal at a networking event is to have a meaningful conversation where you can follow up with them afterwards and set up a coffee or set up a lunch. Like if you can fill your calendar with lunches and coffees with strangers, you will raise money for years to come across many different asset classes. But I always look for an in. When I meet somebody at a networking event, I want to know like what brought them there, what do they do, what are they excited about, what's the vision for their business for the next 3 years, how they get into that business. I'm just that person at a party or that person at a networking event that everybody's like, man, I really like her, but they don't know anything about me because I just let them talk and talk and talk about themselves. And I always find the end, like, wait, what do you do? Then you can really cater how you describe what you do based on what you know about them. I mean, this is how I met an investor in the ocean in the Caymans. Literally, we're out there floating in the water, just everybody's having a cocktail and, friendly faces, and people are talking and find out everything that they do. And I found out she's an attorney in private equity. And she was like, what do you guys do? I was like, oh, we're in the investment space too. And I, just teased what we were up to. And she's like, I want to have another conversation about that. Are you guys going to be here in the ocean or are you at the pool tomorrow? We'll be back in the ocean. So we met up again and, like 3.5, 4 weeks later, it was close to $500,000 in an investment just that came in for one of the deals we were raising on. But I think it's being that attractive character that people want to get to know because you care about them. We're not so transactional. I got to go around and pitch everybody my deal. You don't. And you don't even know if you want to pitch everybody. So figure out who you're talking to first, if it might pique their interest, and then let the relationship develop from there. So connected with her on LinkedIn, right? Sent her a message when we all got home, set up some time to walk her through the opportunity, and now we're partners on a deal. So it all just kind of transpired after that. But the willingness to talk to strangers is a big key to be successful in this.
I like that story, floating in the water in the cave.
I wasn't out there like, I got to raise money. It was just capital raising is a lifestyle. You just talk about what you're passionate about and it kind of oozes out of you and you can't help but speak about it to everybody that you meet. Not every day is that glamorous, but that was one of the more fun stories.
On the flip side, though, so I know money is a topic that is often like could be a dreaded conversation, and maybe that's a cultural thing. And sometimes topics like the money topic gets weird, like when people say, how much money do you make? And then people get all weirded out. What's your tip for like turning around an uncomfortable conversation about money?
My goal is to prevent it from getting awkward. And so my go-to before we have to talk about money is to ask them how they prefer to discuss it. And to also remember that if you don't bring it up, they think it's weird and something is wrong. You're talking about investments. Everybody else that talks to them about investments needs to know what's their net worth. It doesn't have to be their exact net worth, but it needs to be a range. Are they accredited? Do they meet the income thresholds? My go-to is to say something like, dear, part of our conversation around talking investments means that we need to talk about money. I mean, the different deals that we have different regulations and requirements by the Securities Exchange Commission. Some of them have a certain income threshold. Some of them have a certain net worth threshold. I mean, how do we talk about money in a way that makes you feel comfortable? And whenever I ask that, everybody's always like, oh, I mean, I'm an open book. What do you need to know? Versus like me trying to just force the conversation and asking questions where I feel like I'm prying. I explain to them why I need to know and then ask them how do they want to discuss it in a way that makes them.
So being very transparent.
Yeah. Not like slimy salespeople that have an agenda and ask weird questions and you're like, why are you asking me?
Yeah, like what do you really mean behind that? Like, really,
and most people are like, I don't want to tell you that answer because you're going to take that information and use it against me, because that's what typical salespeople do. So I'm always just very transparent. I might even say like, I don't need to know your net worth, but a range would help so I know what type of investments might be of interest.
So you also work with tech companies. How did you get into that? So you have Vineyards, you have your coaching, and you have tech, which is like
totally up. I feel like when you get into raising capital and you've built like really good relationships and investor communities, you can raise for anything. I got into, and these are tech startups. So one I'm raising for right now, one that I raised we're about 29 million over the last 18 months for. But I started investing in it first and just knew the jockey and the person that was building the company and really believed in it and had a chance to bring in some seed capital and jumped on the opportunity and said, yeah, like I love this. I think my investors will love it too. And that opportunity led to the second tech startup as well. I think my rule, having done 2 of these now for tech startups, is that I'm not going to bring one to my investors that has a first-time founder because those are super risky if they've never done it before.
Mm-hmm.
So these founders are second, third act founders. They've done it before. They have a track record. It's their next company and their next idea. And so the leadership team is crucial in any investment like that. But that's how I got into it. It was just saying yes and meeting people and putting my own capital into things. But I found a lot of investors love the tech just because it's higher equity multiples. There's no cash flow. There's no tax advantages. It's a true equity multiple play. But most people have a portion of their portfolio set aside for those types of deals.
So what would be the exit for those type of deals then? Like when they go IPO or something or?
Yeah, the ones like the most recent one that I'm raising for, they don't necessarily want to go IPO. They're looking at an acquisition. It's a SaaS company, so software as a service. So it's, like a 6 to 10x over 5 years. You don't see returns like that in other asset classes. You can only get them in tech. The problem is most people, the tech investments they have access to are like first-time founders. So they're super high risk, where this one is a leadership team that's been doing this for many years. They've got, built-in client list. They're already profitable. They're already operating. Like there's a lot of advantages to an investment like this. So, I say that I love tech, but I don't think I love tech with first-time founders. I'm a little more risk averse at this stage. So I'd be looking for those, kind of those key things before I put money into a tech opportunity. But these are just companies that don't want to deal with venture capital. And we kind of carved a niche for ourselves of retail investors that love the idea of investing in tech. It really helps the company out because they've dealt with venture capital in the past and gives retail investors access to a deal they would have never seen otherwise.
I think the leadership experience like applies to all investments, right? Like you never want to invest in something where they haven't done it before.
Definitely.
If you think back to younger Keeley, who is Keeley before the world told her who to be?
It's interesting because you start out as a kid and then I definitely took a hiatus away from who I am at my core, but I found my way back there. And I've done a lot of work on myself. I've done a lot of work on my mental game, self-awareness about what I really want out of life, how I show up day to day. And the young version of me, I would say the one word that described me is joy. And my grandma used to call me Twinkle. And I just wanted to have
Oh,
fun, make everybody laugh and have a good time. And I lost her in those years when I was in corporate and just chasing after the wrong things, chasing after status, thought that I would be when I achieved VP of sales by 30, that would mean something. That would mean that I was like worthy. So you're chasing after status and certainty. And I was miserable when I got there. And I was like, well, this isn't it. And so that, journey of entrepreneurship and leaving corporate really helped me rediscover like who I am at my core. And I don't want to pursue any business venture unless I can have fun doing it. Like, and I know business is hard, right? Like raising capital is hard. Operating vineyards is hard, but I still think you can have joy in the process. I can always go back to the stressful life I had before, but I didn't like who I was and how I showed up as a person to my family when I was in those corporate years. So I'm proud to say that I do hard things every day as a business owner, but Twinkle's back. The joy in the business is there, and my family's seen it too.
oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's very inspirational. I feel like when I talk to other entrepreneurs, they have like that journey of like I was in corporate and I've lost my,
Your spark.
right, you lost your spark, and then now they're on this entrepreneurial journey and it's back or they're trying to find their way, but at least now it's not like lost. Yeah, definitely like they have that twinkle back, right?
Yes, you're spot on.
What did you have to do? What did that journey look like as far as like mindset stuff that you had to work on and like like mentorships or like what did you have to do to come to
Well, I
that
had to be
realization?
I left corporate and started a business and with a partner and then fell flat on my face and leveled myself financially. And so I think it was through that through that blowing up, right, of losing everything, that I realized like, man, am I really cut out for business? Like, is this the right path for me? And, you always look back and see, everybody says hindsight's 2020. And I think God was protecting me from a partnership that I shouldn't have been in. But everybody goes to Tony Robbins when they're freaking out. That's what I did. I'm supposed to go back to corporate. I knew I could hire a headhunter. I could go get a VP of sales job. That was easy. But I didn't want to, because I just felt this calling, like, you're supposed to be a business owner. And I didn't know for what. Like, where do I even start? I just had this huge blow up. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. And so going to Tony Robbins, I went to like 6 events, over like 18 months, and just got immersed myself in the self-development circles and like Joe Dispenza, and just like doing the inner work of like, what's important to me in my life? Who am I at my core? What do I want my life to be about? What do I focus on a daily basis? How do I control my emotions and my state? All the things that I didn't have time to do in corporate and wasn't even aware of. So I just rebuilt myself, I think, over, a few years. And I truly believe that entrepreneurship is the greatest journey of self-discovery you'll ever take. Like, it will expose all of your head trash. It'll expose all of your insecurities, everything that you need to work on. It's going to come out and being an entrepreneur. And so I think if you really embrace that process and be willing to fail and be willing to get back up quickly and get back in the arena and live to fight another day and fight for your dreams, like, you will prove to yourself what you're capable of. And you learn to trust yourself as well, and learn to trust the decisions that you make. These kind of wins that you have, you conquer them. You say yes to the scary things, and it takes you to a bigger arena. And you're like, man, I could do this because I did that, right? Like, I was terrified raising this money for the first tech investment, which was 29 million. I didn't think I could do it. When I said yes, the number was like 7, and then it kept growing. And we're like, yeah,
Wow.
we can do that. You can do that. Yeah, we can do that. Like, oh yeah, we can do that. But like, so now that I did that, this next opportunity is like, hey, we need 13 million. I'm like, we got it. We got that. That's easy, right? Because we did this one, and that one was really scary. So I just think that it's like, go on the journey, like, of facing yourself, face your insecurities, face the things that scare you. You'll prove to yourself what you're really capable of, and you learn to trust yourself, which I think is crucial for success, especially being a business owner. But just put your hands up, learn to enjoy the ride, because it's wild. As you know, as an entrepreneur, the journey is wild.
It is wild.
It is. But, the gift is who we become in the process. I think that's the real gift.
I have 2 questions from that. Did you walk on the coal at the Tony Robbins event?
Yeah, they call you a fire walker. I've done it 3 times. And it's 3 times at 3 different events. So yes, those coals are freaking hot, because the first time, I think the last 2 steps, I felt it. And it's because, like, he teaches you how to control your state. He's like, your body knows how to protect itself. And he teaches you how to control your emotional state so that your body will protect itself from, the hot coals. And so, my first time around, I got a blister on my foot from like the last 2 steps. I was like, ooh, that's hot. But it's because I got out of state. The second times I was like, I don't even feel it. Like, were those even hot? And they are, because they burn the coals down all day from, like, they build these big bonfires and burn the coals down. But it's pretty cool. I mean, I love Tony Robbins. I love everything he does. I love his events. I'd recommend it for anybody that's willing to face themselves and wants to grow.
Okay, and my second question is that you mentioned your $29 million raise, which is amazing, and you had started off with, you signed up for 7, and then it was all of a sudden 29. Well, I mean, what did that look like trying to scale from that? Was it from 7 to 29? Like, what did you have to do differently? Like, did you have to figure out a new tactic to get from that number, the lower number, to the higher number?
So we started building a team of fund managers to help us get it done. The thing that was unique about this one is that I was pitching, and we can't record them. They were very small, webinars, very small Zoom calls. So when I went back and counted, I think I did close to 80 pitches, like live pitches of the deal. And so I got really good at it, right? Telling that story over and over and over again with the same excitement and the same conviction every single time. And, there were a couple of freak out moments where we felt like we'd stalled out. I remember one time in Miami, my business partner and I were standing on the balcony, the room we were staying at, and looking at the ocean, like, we're tapped out. Like, how are we going to get this done? And, you just look like you're totally out of resources. And we're like, get the affirmations, because we have a list before we go into every raise of affirmations that we speak and say over the raise, over our investors, over our capabilities. And I remember just saying those out loud, looking at the ocean. And I said, I have a new one. I was like, as waves, because watching these waves just roll into the shore, never ending. I was like, as waves roll into the shore, money flows endlessly into these accounts. And we just said it with conviction. And you know what? We figured it out, and all the money came flooding in from places we'd never even anticipated. People that said no were saying yes. People that said yes were doubling their investment. Like it all came in like a flood the last 45 days of the raise. And it was incredible to see how it happened. And so I'm a woman of faith, and I don't know what your listeners believe, whether it's God or the universe or some higher power, but we're not here alone, and we're not doing this alone. And I could not have done this without, God's grace and getting us through this process, because we had some big freak out moments. We were like, you know what? It's fine. God's got us, and it's coming in. So you have to declare victory over whatever it is that you're tackling from the beginning. I declare victory over this raise that we're starting right now. It doesn't matter what challenges, obstacles we run into. We're going to get this thing across the finish line no matter what, because I believe that in my gut. Like with everything I have, I believe we're going to be victorious. And there's so much of that applies to your success, because if you believe it here first, you follow through with the actions that get the results. Most people think like, what do I have to do to get the results I want? It starts with, who do I have to be to do the things I need to do, to take the bold actions I have to take to get the results. So much of it controlling what goes on between your ears and deciding what you choose to believe about your success of any venture that you're going into.
That's super inspirational. And we're probably going to be listening to that video snippet of you saying that over and over. It's all about mindset, right? Visualizing and mindset. What will be, will be. And it's, if you imagine it already there, it'll be there, right?
Yeah. And letting go of like how it's going to happen. It's like, I'm not going to stress over it. It doesn't matter. I mean, we got hit with major curveballs this past week, and I'm like, seen it before. It's all going to work out. And having that affirmation of, I always figure it out. I always win. I always figure it out. So it doesn't matter what the scoreboard looks like. We're getting this thing across the finish line. And believing that at your core takes a lot of the stress out of the equation, because stress doesn't change the outcome. It just gives you more gray hairs, and it sucks all the fun out of it when you stress over something. So I've learned to just kind of be at peace about whatever big thing it is that I'm tackling, and it's going to happen, and I can't wait to watch it unfold, and I'm not going to worry about the little things.
You are a successful woman investor, and we are in a field, I feel like the investment field is male dominated, frankly. So if you could speak to a woman listening right now who's in the thick of it, what would you say to her from your side, from the other side?
I would tell her that I would rather be a woman in a man's world than the opposite. Like, I would rather be a woman in a field that's dominated by men than be a woman trying to make a name for myself in a woman's world, because I've proven this to myself just selling financial education. I was in a man's world. I was the first woman to walk the stage and earn, certain sales awards. I was the first female executive on the leadership team. But I never looked at it like it was a disadvantage. And I think the minute that women start looking at it like, oh, but I'm a woman in a man's world, like it's something negative, you're going to manifest exactly what you don't want to experience. People would rather talk to women about money. Men will open up to women about money and investments more than they will another man, because there's ego involved with men. It's natural. They've got egos. Women don't. They will open up to you about your money. Women would also rather talk to another woman about finances than another man that they might feel talks down to them or doesn't explain things. So like, we're in the world of money and we get to be women. I think it's a massive advantage. So I think you need to look at it that way first. Like, I'm so glad I'm a woman in a man's world, because I'm about to climb to the top because I've got a huge advantage and they don't realize it. That's how I look at it.
Well, obviously your company is Texas Legacy Vines. The concept of legacy, I'm assuming, is central to what your vision is for your company. Can you talk a little bit about what's legacy mean to you, and maybe for you and your investors?
Yes, definitely. So when we came up with that name, it was twofold. It was number one for our investors and number two for Texas. So I'm a 7th generation Texan. Mason's a 6th generation Texan. So just two families that love this state and really want to see the wine industry thrive here. And our legacy is bringing mechanized vineyards to Texas and like filling the supply gap, taking a Texas wine national, and like being two diehard Texas families that did it. And then the other half of it for our investors is, this is a legacy play. They invest with us once and they're with us for 40 years. Like, we're going to meet their kids. Some of them we're going to meet their grandkids. And it's unique in that, most investments last 3 to 5 years, 3 to 6 years. This one's multiple decades because it cash flows for multiple decades. So the ability for them to pass that down to their kids and their grandkids is really important to us because family is really important to us. Both the Moreland family and the Hubbard family, we're just very tight-knit families that care a lot about our state and care a lot about our investors and care a lot about the next generation.
All right. So let's close with some rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Let's go for it. I hope so.
What's the most overrated investment advice you hear?
The whole lifestyle creep thing. I just feel like we're all adults. Nobody's going to spend outside of their budget. Like we all know that. But I'm also a firm believer that like I'm not going to wait until I'm 60 to enjoy my life today. I'm going to drive the car I want to drive because I work hard for this money. And the car that I drive, the way that I dress, the things that I spend money on make me show up differently in this world and draw the bigger opportunities to me. So you cannot drive up to a meeting if you want to meet high net worth investors and ask them for at least $500,000 in a beater car because you're keeping everything as low as possible so you can pour everything into investments. I think there's a time and place for that. But if you want to play in the big leagues and you want access to bigger opportunities, you need to look the part. I'm not saying spend outside of your means, right? But I hear it so much that I'm like, yes, and you can have the Starbucks coffee every morning. You can go to the spa once a month. You can drive a nice car and still make a lot of money investing too.
Next question. Biggest mistake entrepreneurs make today?
Not pivoting. I think in our market that we're in, my parents sat me down when I was a kid and read, I say I was a kid, I was a teenager on like a Saturday. They sat me and three of my siblings down and said, we're going to read you this book. And we were all like, oh, we got to listen to you read the whole book on a Saturday afternoon. Like this sucks. But it forever changed my life. And that book is called Who Moved My Cheese? And I think,
Ooh.
yeah, it's so good. The ability to pivot and see like when the opportunity is moving and stop forcing something in a certain market when it's not there anymore. And don't get so caught up and tied into what you built that you can't see that all the money is moving in another direction and you're left behind because of it. So you got to quickly be willing to pivot.
Your one word secret to happiness.
It's going to sound weird because it's kind of, most people think it is happiness, but joy is different than happiness. And joy is like an unexplainable joy you choose. Like happiness is a state that you're in because something happened. Joy you choose on a daily basis. Joy regardless of what's going on in your life, joy regardless of all the challenges that you're dealing with in business. You know, everybody has obstacles in their life, but joy, I believe, is a secret to real fulfillment. And it's a choice every day.
Last question. One piece of advice you'd give your younger self.
I'd say yes, especially to the stuff that scares you. Because I've proven that to myself. Like we all get caught up in, oh yeah, but how am I going to do it? And I don't know if I should say yes to this opportunity because how is it going to happen? But and I learned that from Tony Robbins. He was like, say yes with conviction. You'll figure out the how. Like you always figure it out. But if we sit there and try to map the whole thing out of how I'm going to get to $29 million, I probably would have said no. If God had shown me all the things we had to go through to get to that number, I might have been like, I don't know if we want to do it. But like we say yes, that like those butterflies in your stomach, you know, that nervous feeling, that's such a good indicator of, okay, this is something I'm supposed to do. Why? Because it's an opportunity for growth and it scares me. And I'm scared of it because I've never done it before. And the more things that you say yes to like that, the more opportunity that you build and the more that you learn to trust yourself. That's why I've always wanted to go skydiving. I haven't gone yet. But not because like I'm an adrenaline junkie, but like
It's a
to prove
challenge.
to myself, right? Like mind over body. Like when the instructor says jump, that I don't hesitate. I just go, you know, like say yes and do the thing, especially when you're scared. That's what I would have told myself. Say yes, even to the scary stuff.
Okay, I'm going to ask you next time, Keeley. Did you go skydiving?
I'm still working on
Have
getting
you done it yet?
my affairs in order. Sure nothing happens. And I got to find a safe place to go. So, you know, it's really good planes. But yeah, I'm totally going to do it.
So, looking ahead, what's next for you? Like, what's coming up this year? What do you have planned? What are you working on recently? And
Yeah, I'm like a 90-day sprint type of girl. People are like, what are your 3 to 5 year plans? I have no idea. Because anytime I've ever set out to make 3 to 5 year plans, it's totally different in the direction that my life goes. So 90 days, finishing this tech raise for this company. So that'll be exciting. I've got a lot of travel this summer. I'm turning 40 in July.
Ooh,
So I'm going to Mallorca, Spain, and then to Paris. So I'm really excited about
beautiful.
that. Yes. And then, just this fall, like building the coaching business and just doing the things that bring me joy and kicking off another vineyard raise this fall. I try not to live too far into the future because I've learned that about myself, especially when I was in corporate. I was always living in the future versus the present. What am I working on today and what am I excited about? I'm really not thinking much past July at this point.
Okay. Well, thank you, Keeley, for your time today. For our listeners, how can people get in contact with you? How can they learn more about vineyard investments and capital
Yes. Well,
raising from you? And how do they connect with you?
so you can find me on LinkedIn. DM me there for capital raising stuff. For anything vineyard related, you can get us on texaslegacyvines.com. My email is just Keeley, my first name, at texaslegacyvines.com. And yeah, I mean, I love connecting with people. Maybe we can have like, I don't know, wine over Zoom, like a virtual wine versus coffee. That'd be fun. But yeah, you can find me in both of those places.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Keeley.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe link, like, and share. Until next time, keep investing, keep roaming, and live the life that you deserve.